What's up, you absolutely wonderful Magento loving friends of mine? Joseph from SwiftOtter here with, you guessed it, another Prove Your Expert Status video. This one is interesting because this literally came from a situation we dealt with last Friday. So this is fresh, relevant, hot off the press stuff to talk about. And I think this is good stuff to talk about. And this is part of the value that we bring in the training that we deliver is we're in the trenches every day, just like each one of you. And this is the kind of stuff that we hope to help educate you with as far as the thought process and how to solve problems quickly. Before we jump into this, though, I want to make sure that you know who responded to this question. And I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of love out there for each one of you who provided an answer here. There were some answers in here. I did give 3 answers. That was maybe some aspects of it that I didn't fully agree with, but they were answers. You all were thinking through it, and just because I don't agree with it, there's not gospel truth here. Like this is up for significant amount of interpretation, and so this is us collaborating together, working together, coming up with answers for these questions, and I absolutely freaking love that. So huge shout out, huge love to every one of you who provided answers here. Great work. Big thanks for that. I love this. This is what community interaction is all about. So great work there. Now look at this. You maintain a website on Adobe Commerce using the Payflow Pro integration. You are receiving reports that order payment records in the database now store 2100 as the expiration year and double O's for the expiration month. This effectively prevents payment processing as the merchant uses these values in their ERP to capture funds. You have verified that no changes were made to the codebase, ERP, or integration, or the ERP itself. What is the first step you take to fixing this problem? Now, there are 3 different answers here. A, set breakpoints through the Magento PayPal module and execute locally. Submit a ticket to PayPal and ask what changed in their API. Put PayPal module into sandbox mode and review the server-side log. So ultimately, there are aspects of each one of these that are valuable. Now, the answer that I had in my mind as the correct answer when I was writing this was answer A, to set breakpoints. That's ultimately what we did. We got the problem solved fairly quickly, and I'll go into what actually happened here. But B and C are not necessarily wrong either. A couple of you said start with B, but also fall back to the other ones. Here's the situation. We have a merchant where their credit card processing is down. It's out cold. It's done. And so while people can still check out, the information that's coming through the checkout is incorrect, which means that, again, they cannot process this through their ERP. And I cannot remember in this specific situation whether it was unable to even be imported into the ERP or not. It might have been, it had a stoppage, so ultimately the fulfillment couldn't get these orders set and ready to go. So ultimately, yes, in that way, their website was down. This is an absolute tier 1 emergency. All hands on deck getting this resolved as quickly as possible. Now, what do you do? How do we get this done? So the submitting the ticket is definitely a good thing. Ultimately, a project manager might be able to do that. But if this, depending on where this ranks in the priority list, it depends on PayPal getting back to us, which nothing against them. I've not had good luck with very quick responses. So ultimately, you were looking at 24 hours or more of an outage, just if B was the only action we take. So B is probably a good thing to do. Maybe as the first option, probably not. And I think that was one thing that I tried to put in here is what is the first step you take to fixing this problem. So B is not necessarily the first step I would take. It will be a step because depending on what we find out, we'll need to have a conversation with PayPal, but it's not necessarily the first step. So, so we're down to 2 options here. Either set breakpoints or put the PayPal module into sandbox mode and review the server logs. And I think either one of those can be correct answers. Now, I tend to go full bore when it comes to debugging. That's why I choose A. However, I think C is also somewhat of a valid answer, or not somewhat, is a valid answer too, with one really big caveat. What if putting into sandbox mode does not expose the problem? It mean it looks like it's fixed. What if the logs actually are not showing this information? In fact, that's why it drove me away from selecting C, because I had a little bit more domain knowledge, I think, in this case. In this case, all logs that, if you put into debug mode, PayPal into debug mode, all the sensitive information like expiration date are all asterisked out. So you can put it into sandbox mode or whatever, but everything is asterisked out. And we're talking about the expiration date right there. So yeah, we're kind of screwed. We don't have any we don't have any information by which we can actually get this problem solved. So that's where it comes back to A. So again, C is a fairly relevant answer. I'm not saying it's wrong, but there is, at least in my case, there were some nuance that made it more or less irrelevant. Because yes, ultimately we reviewed server-side logs immediately. We did not ever kick into sandbox mode. Maybe that would have been a good thing to try. However, what I want to keep hammering home is don't be afraid to set this up locally. What we did in this case is we pulled down the credentials from production, set this up on a local machine, ran through the process, and we dropped a whole bunch of breakpoints in that process, examined the API results, and guess what it turns out? That PayPal is now returning X's instead of an expiration date. Like they have started obfuscating that on their side. So when it comes back, that expiration date from PayPal is actually being written into the sales order payment table. Well, guess what? Now we are left with, because of how the way that it's calculated out, it's actually left within 2100 and 00 for the month. Problem solved by preventing it from overriding those values that were coming in. Is that a good long-term solution? No. The best long-term solution is we're going to wait to see what PayPal comes back with. I mean, I guess it could be, at the end of the day, it could be the best long-term solution if PayPal says, oh yeah, guess what? We're not giving you expiration dates anymore. And we're like, okay, fine. What are we going to, well, okay, we'll just pull it in from the front. Like, at that point, we're left to kind of whatever PayPal says about the situation. And my understanding is we're still waiting to hear back from them. But as far as a good solution on what's happening here. But at the end of the day, get in there, get that problem solved quickly. Do not be afraid to set breakpoints. Look at these logs and try other things. And that's one thing I also tried to set up in this question that's really important for debugging. Eliminate all variables. Did we do a code delivery yesterday? Well, if we did, that would have certainly complicated things a lot. Did we do are we aware of any changes in the payment system? Did they do an upgrade to the ERP recently? Well, ultimately in this case, it was actually, the problem was in the sales order payment table. So it had nothing to do with the ERP integration or the ERP. But we found that out after just doing some additional digging. Has PayPal in this case put out any advisory saying, hey, we're going to change the API response? Whatever. The best thing is to limit the scope to as small as possible. Once we have the scope limited, then we are much more likely to have a quicker resolution. So there's your expert answer for this week. I say expert answer. That's my opinion. I'm always learning. I'm always growing. I wouldn't always call myself an expert on all these things. This was just a situation we had to work through. And I hope, though, it puts you into expert status as you work to solve problems very quickly and effectively. Let's see you next week.